Now, this episode of The Strain, more than any other episode thus far, has really emphasized the theme of loss and, having to move on, having to continue the mission. And I'll tell you what, the simple way out, the simple way to do this episode would have been to just have the characters crying the entire episode, kind of reflecting on what they've done, or not really reflecting on what they've done, but reflecting on what they've lost and how much they've sacrificed. That would have been the simple way out. But what they do here is that not only do they reflect on what they've lost, or not, they don't even really do that. The show itself and the way that it's filmed and the way that it's staged and the way that this whole episode plays out, it gives the characters time to breathe and kind of reflect on what they've on what they've lost without necessarily devoting time to, I've lost this or I've lost this, blah blah blah. Some of them do, but for the most part, it's strictly visual and with few words. Not only that, but again, it really emphasizes the theme of moving on in spite of what you've lost, and how in this case it's more important to continue the mission. I mean, there will be time for mourning later, and I actually thought that was really well handled. Now, first of all, we do get some more flashbacks into Setrakian's past, and if I had any doubts before about Setrakian being the most interesting character on this show, they have been completely wiped away. Because this particular flashback, we flash back to 1967, whereas the previous ones have been in the in 1940. I forget which 1940. I think it might have been 44. I think he was in the concentration camp. Here he's 1960. He's in 1967. He has a wife. They're getting ready to have kids. They're getting ready to settle down. He's basically spent the past 20-something years hunting down the master, trying to finish what he tried to start back in the concentration camp. And not only do we get to see that little mission and how that this might have been another homage to Dracula. How Jonathan Harker and Van Helsing, how Jonathan Harker comes to Transylvania, and how later the heroes come to Transylvania to try to destroy Dracula. This whole landscape was very Transylvania-esque. I don't exactly know where they were. Maybe they said it in the episode, but I digress. This whole flashback gave us some real insight into not just one of the pieces in Setrakian's collection, but also one of the things that makes him such an interesting character, which is, what he's lost, what he's sacrificed. I mean, he has spent the better part of his life, most of his life actually, hunting these things down. And we learn just what the depths of his loss are, because his wife was turned into one of these things, and as crazy as it sounds, granted, a lot of things on this show are crazy, but as crazy as it sounds, he actually cut her heart out and keeps her heart in a jar and feeds it blood, which I believe is what we saw him doing at the beginning of the show. So yeah, I can't really say that I was surprised when I saw him finally do it at the end of the episode, and at the end of the flashback. I can't really say that I was surprised, because given the way they introduced the flashback, and given the way he's kind of looking at the jar and kind of saying, like, please give me strength, I thought, okay, this has got to be his wife or something. I just hit the microphone. But in addition to that, we actually had Nora having to kill her mother, because her mother was nailed by one of the it wasn't just one of the vampires, it was the rock star vampire, the sardonic rock star vampire, the punk rock guy with all the makeup on. He got into Setrakian's pawn shop and started drinking the blood of Nora's mother, and Nora, at the end of the episode, actually had to chop off the head of her mother. She didn't have to. F was going to do it, but he was honestly kind of shortchanged in this episode, and I'll get to that being one of the only problems with this one. But yeah, for the most part, these dual storylines of... and also, I really got started to get invested in the relationship between Fett and Dutch. I believe those are their names. Kevin Durand and Ruta Gedmintas. The more I see them together, the more I'm kind of buying their relationship. Because before, when we're supposed to feel bad that Dutch leaves, I didn't really think it was all that big a deal because we've barely known her, or at least the heroes have barely known her. And given how Fett, very much in character, given how direct he is with a lot of his comments, and how he doesn't exactly mince words, given how he blatantly asks, about her past, I actually thought that was a really good scene between the two of them. A really genuine scene, given how these two have been shown to behave. And also taking that into consideration, I can believe that these two would at least have a kind of dangerous attraction to each other, or dangerous in the sense that they said they both prefer dangerous relationships or destroying relationships. I don't know what they said, but yeah. The more I see of them, the more I like them. We got some insight into why Dutch has this particular set of hacking skills. And in addition, I don't really know how this is going to play out. Maybe the president will declare a state of emergency, or at least a state of hysteria. But they actually used the emergency alert system. They were able to hack into that, which it's one of those things where it's a little far fetched, but it's movies, and as long as it draws me in, I can overlook certain things. This was an aspect that I could overlook. Yeah, some of these scenes were really well acted. Not just by the young actor who played I don't know, Setrakian in his 40s, I think. He seemed to be in his 40s, maybe very early 50s in the 1967 flashback, but he did a really good job. I don't exactly know who played him, but he did a really good job. I was impressed. David Bradley, as always, is great. Corey Stoll is great. Kevin Durand and Ruta Gedmintas are a lot of fun. And Mia Maestro was especially good in this episode, especially toward the end. I mean, that scream that she let out when she was chopping her mother's head off, spoilers. I've probably spoiled the whole episode by now, but the scream she let out was just heart-wrenching. One problem I have with this episode is that the character of Gus. I think the character of Gus was very superfluous this time around, because not only did his plotline seem more distant from everything that's going on than it ever has before, considering he's not exactly losing anything. I mean, he's farther from the main narrative than I could have ever imagined. I mean, he's just trying to get some guns to gear up for his own private war. I don't know how that connects to anything else aside from him being one of the people who is fighting the vampires, but he's not part of the main group of protagonists. And I've actually been fairly accepting of him up to this point, partially due to Miguel Gomez's performance, and partially due to the fact that I'm waiting for all these characters to meet up. That was kind of the case with Kevin Durand's character and Corey Stoll's character, or the main trio of characters. They eventually met up in the gas station, but Gus, not only did he seem really far away from where the plot was happening, Eichhorst and the vampires assaulting the pawn shop, which again kind of exemplifies that theme of loss, because they're essentially losing their base of operations. But not only was Gus very far away from that, but his portion of the episode just wasn't interesting, and this actually brings me back to Corey Stoll's character. I think if we completely removed Gus from this episode, then I think that would have given F more time to reflect on his own sense of loss, and I don't mean to keep using that word, but he has no idea where his wife is. He's having to take care of his son while at the same time trying to calm his son about not knowing where his wife is. His wife is probably with the master by now, and yeah, I think if we had taken the time that this episode devoted to Gus and taken it and given it to F, I think we would have had a stronger episode. But as it is, the episode itself, as it is very strong. Because, like I said, the acting is possibly better than it's ever been on some fronts. And on the fronts where the acting has basically stayed the same, David Bradley is great as always in this show, and Richard Sammel. They still maintain their usual standards. The acting hasn't really gotten worse on any fronts. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode, or the finale, if I'm not mistaken. I think the next episode is the finale, so holy crap. Yeah, The Strain, really, really emotionally satisfying episode.